I got licensed, and I actually had a friend who was a real estate agent who was licensed but was an assistant to a complete top producer, and was able to get a lot of experience really quickly that way. You really got to sell your sphere of influence, your network. And so I told them that I created this massive database of like 800, connections that I was ready and willing to, start reaching out to, and that, I have a stronghold here in Chicago. So I basically was trying to sell myself as having this broad network of clients. Yeah, I wanted to, provide some sort of value, and that would be money in their pockets. Yeah, man, it's brutal, especially when you're working a full-time job, and then, after you're done working your full-time job, you got to go to the building. It's like, let's go back to the building. Let's try and keep chipping away at this. How we doing? Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your guest, Joey Turano, and with me, as always, is your host, Tom Shawcross and Mark Ainley.
How about them Bears?
Let's get into it.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Being Improvious from Chicago.
Yeah.
Ravenswood Manor boy over
funny.
here.
Manor boys.
Actually, you said you were just west there, so Ravenswood Minor.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, dude, this is a great episode. As we said all the time, this one made me laugh a lot.
Oh, I knew. What was the text I sent you and Lance yesterday?
Oh, he said this would be a good one.
This is a good one because you just cracked me up. So I don't know why, but something I enjoy talking to you. So.
On a serious note, I'll say it's also great to just hear like the pure vulnerability and just reality of these things, instead of like, oh yeah, I'm crushing it. Things are great, right? These are the things we want to hear about. Of like this is hard. Like this is a difficult thing to do.
Well, listening to him, so many people don't do what he did, and they just sit on the sidelines for years and do nothing because they don't find what they deem to be the right opportunity versus finding the right opportunity to get into the game. And that's what we talk about today. And although we'll talk about ultimately his cash flow and stuff like that, we might joke about that a little, like he's still in far way better position than someone that did nothing or waited for that property for 4 years and got killer cash flow. So it's a huge eye-opener to those that are sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out what your first deal or two are going to be.
But it's also like crazy to think about the math of like, we're going to talk about it. We got into a property for $2K in Logan Square, like not in some like beat up neighborhood. And it's like, dude, like I bet you my wife spends more than $2K on coffee in a year. Right. And this picked up, and in 2 years or a year, whatever, like picked up $100,000 of equity.
Or
it's
DoorDash
like,
now.
Yeah. Like it's insane. Like, so yeah, like those numbers on a traditional paper might not be there, but like, that's a great investment for that amount of money to get that, and to get that appreciation on the whole building is insane.
Well, you always hear the saying, you want your money to work for you. And it goes at the very lowest levels of just buying a property. When you buy the property, the day you close, your money starts working for you through things we talk about in episodes, such as your rents are going up, your values are going up, you're reducing your taxable income. Like your money is working for you. Even if it's just a few $1,000s, it turns into hundreds of $1,000s.
Yeah, it's the power of leverage, right? Like having a mortgage, it produces that leverage for you. Now there's risk for it, right? You got to be able to afford it. You can lose the house. You got to deal with things like this isn't free, and we talked about in the episode all sunshine and roses. But the general principle of that is just it's insane. It's mind blowing. I don't know where else you can exploit it except in real estate.
But to answer that, though, I think it's about 40% of our listeners are under 30. You have very little risk.
Yeah, take your shots. Like,
you have very little risk, man. So there's never going to be a better time than now where you have lower risks than right now. So,
yeah. All right. What's our housing provider tip of the week?
All right. So housing provider tip of the week. This happens every year for us, or I hear it happen to other investors, but you might smell gas in the winter, and what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to call 911 right away, and People's Gas comes out, NICOR comes out, and they solve your problem. But in the winter, you end up having this other layer of complexity where they're like, all right, we got a gas problem. We're going to turn the gas off. And until these 2 or 3 things are fixed, we're leaving the gas off, and your tenant has no heat. So if you have a gas issue or you're potentially calling them out because you might smell gas, one, make sure you're still following that. But you do run the risk of them coming out to the building. They might tag your boiler or tag your furnace because something is blocked in your chimney or something like that. So be prepared to follow up with a no heat solution that you might have to solve. Either your HVAC guy on call. For us, a couple of times last year, we had stuff stuck in the chimney, bird's nest. So you had to get a guy out in the deepest cold on a 3-story roof. It might have snowed the day before. So I mean, it took just a day and a half just to get the right guy to agree to come do that stupid task. But in the meantime, you got to make sure you get space heaters, whatever you got to do. And another kind of tip there, it might be separate in itself. And you could order on Amazon space heaters to get delivered to tenants most of the time within hours at this point.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Instead of trying to go to the store, figure it out, or messenger service. So I know what we do here. We'll do some of that Amazon sometimes, but we all have on the weekends space heaters at our houses, and we just run a messenger service to take 5 of them to that place, whatever, for that weekend. So
good stuff. If you have a 3-unit building too, just keep them in the basement.
Yeah.
Like if that's all you have,
if you're
in your personal storage or whatever, like, hey,
Yep.
tell the tenant go grab it or go grab it for whatever if you're close.
Yeah, for sure. It's
But
great.
be ready. This will happen to you.
Yep, and it'll always happen on Saturday when you can't get the part for the boiler, or you can't get a guy out to service your chimney or whatever it might be.
Yeah. All right, let's jump in here.
All right, man. Today's guest, self-proclaimed shameless. I love it in a positive way. We met over the summer, and we've been talking ever since. I've helped him with a garage fire. He's done so much, and I think one of the bigger things that we didn't talk about in the show today is he wanted to be in real estate, so he went and got a job in real estate. A lot of people are fighting to get out of their 9 to 5. He actually found a 9 to 5 in real estate, which has helped propel his investment career. And without further ado, I want to introduce Joey Turano.
Thanks for having me, guys.
How did we first meet?
So I think we first met actually at the Pony Inn at one of your events.
Yeah.
Sarita's.
Yeah, Sarita's event. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
what
the
it was.
Sarita
There
sells
you
him.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We talked. We sat at the bar. And we talked for a while
I
that night.
talked your head.
Gotcha. And I think we connected on the phone one time as well too. I don't know if that was before or after that.
I called you and my tenant burned my garage down.
That was you. Okay, I remember now. Okay.
It was an SOS. Yeah.
I love that your cell number is like the SOS for a lot of property
So
management
funny.
questions.
I don't. It's so funny. A lot of times people will come up to me and they're like, "Yeah, we talked one time," and I'm like, and they're like, "I'm the guy that blank." They're like, "Oh yeah, that's right. How did what happened with that?" So
Yeah, so funny. Yeah, I wanted to call you multiple other times, but I saved it for the catastrophe.
yeah, garage burning down. We've all had those. I've had
funny.
I've had a couple garages burned down. I don't know if
Buildings burned down, right?
I've
I
had
think I
buildings
heard
burned
that.
down. I've had no one's ever
Crazy.
one property we managed. We didn't own it, but we had a fatality. It was a sad story, but for the most part, it's just been pure vandalism and destruction.
Nice, that's fun.
There you go. All right, so Joey, to set the stage for our listeners, you're a young guy here. You've already bought a bunch of properties. We're going to get into some of the struggles, some of the achievements, but let's start the very beginning. Like you become an agent just out of college. Walk us through here.
Sure. So
Out of college at the University of Illinois.
at the University of Illinois, our alma mater. So I graduated 2017, and a lot of my buddies were getting into all these corporate 9 to 5 jobs, and I kind of knew that wasn't for me. I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do at the time, other than just kind of have fun and travel and fuck around basically. So I actually did some traveling. I did this epic motorcycle trip, like 12,000 miles, solo camping, all that fun stuff. Then I lived in Spain for a couple years. So basically doing some soul searching right out of college.
How'd you fund that, or is that very?
I was waiting tables.
Okay.
Yeah, so living at mom and pa's, no shame, waiting tables on the side. So saved up some dough and did, a couple fun, awesome adventures, and then was slowly, trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do with my life, basically. And I always wanted to, get into real estate investing. I basically had some buddies' parents who had invested in real estate and, had success. So I didn't know anything about it, but I did know that being an agent could be a good, way to get into that. And so, after I got back from Spain in 2021, I got my real estate license and basically tried to join a team where I could get as much experience as humanly possible, as fast as possible.
You know what's crazy? Real estate's the one thing that people get into not because they know how to do it or want to do what actually has to be done. It's because they see the future vision or they see what they think it could be. Like you want to be a doctor because you want to help people. You want to be an attorney because you want to protect people. You want to be an architect. You like to draft and build things. Like people get a realtor, like, I like what that guy has done with himself. I want to figure out how he got there, and I'm going to be in real estate tomorrow. Like it's so like backwards. Like I know you just kind of made me realize how many people come on here and say that exactly. Like I knew there's something about it. I don't know what it was, but I had to get into it.
That and also like I didn't fit anywhere else. Yeah, it's like the misfits. Like, I couldn't do this, that, or the other. I'm gonna go to real estate.
Yeah, it's like I certainly couldn't envision myself, doing a cubicle 9 to 5 jobs. I'm like, yeah, I want to be my own boss. Passive income. That sounds great. I want to sip a pina colada on the beach, collect rent checks. All daisies and roses. But
And that's what it is, right? No.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so you made it sound simple, but talk to us about you actually are very strategic in choosing someone. I shouldn't even say strategic, but I really like the thought process you went through. So talk to us about joining a team. Like, what did you actually do?
Sure. So I got licensed, and I actually had a friend who was a real estate agent who was licensed but was an assistant to a complete top producer, and was able to get a lot of experience really quickly that way, kind of with almost a salary basically as an assistant. So I was like, okay, yeah, sounds like a great idea, because that there's this big hurdle as an agent. Your first 6 months or a year, you don't make any money. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't know about that. So I basically approached, his name is DJ Paris. He also has a podcast here in Chicago. And I went up to him and I told him my whole plan. I was like, I want to be an assistant to a top producer, learn the ropes, and then basically join their team. And he goes, yeah, that might be a little tricky, but, because they basically, if you're going to be someone's assistant, they want you to continue being their assistant. They don't, they don't want to train you and then have you basically go off on your own. But what he did was he actually printed out a list of the top producing agents in Chicago, top 100. And I got home, I basically had a templated email, and at the bottom of it, I just quickly introduced myself, my background, my lack of experience, and, expressed my eagerness and whatnot. And then at the end, I said, I'm going to call you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Hope to connect. I went down the list. 20 people later, the first one that picked up was Ben Lawless, who is the team I ended up joining.
What did the email, like, eagerness is one thing, but what other skills did you present, like, that you had?
So I connected with another agent who is like a friend's mom, and she was like, well, you really got to sell your sphere of influence, your network. And so I told them that I created this massive database of like 800, connections that I was ready and willing to, start reaching out to, and that, I have a stronghold here in Chicago. So I basically was trying to sell myself as, having this broad network of clients that I could ultimately,
That's important. That's huge over the eagerness.
But this is just going out and doing the things that need to be done. Like, there's so many people listening right now who are just surfing through Redfin or thinking they want to do this, and it's like, no, like, get the list, go ahead, call them, realize that 95% are going to say no, and deal with it, and someone will say yes, right? And here we are, however many years later. Like, it's do the actions.
Well, it gets talked about a lot. I get a couple emails a week. Hey man, I'll do anything that you need me to do. It's like, but now I got to think about what I need you to do, and it's great you're eager, but I got to train you, and it's like, when you kind of presented a solution for a potential problem these top producers might have, and that's huge when you're trying to put yourself out there, solve their problem. They're a lot more likely to say, "Oh, come here on board. Let's see what you can do."
Yeah. I wanted to provide some sort of value, and that would be money in their pockets.
When we had Brandon Turner's EA or assistant or on here, like, that's what he did. He built a whole software set for him and said, here you go, man. And then that's how he got hired. Like, he
got to live in Hawaii for a year.
Yeah, he took
Turner.
his skill set and applied it to that guy. And that guy and Brandon Turner didn't even know what he needed, but he presented something that wow, I actually could use this. Yeah. So it's important that we point that out, I think.
Yeah, it worked out great. It ended up being a really great fit. They completely, were fantastic with training, and I actually ended up completely shadowing an agent. His name's David Fields, great guy, and we're still like best buds. But I shadowed him. I mean, he couldn't escape me. I was really, like,
that's
totally like,
stalking,
I want to go on showings, I want to go on inspections, and then at those, inspections, I'm like totally picking the inspector's brain and just
He's at his breakfast
really
table.
was trying to just be a sponge to expedite the process as fast as possible.
I love right now we can just clip in like, David, what do you think about that? That guy's a pain in the ass.
Exactly.
We are not best buds.
He showed up for breakfast at my house.
Yes. funny.
All right, that's awesome you did that. Talk to us about just financially that first year though, right? Like you do a lot of work, you're doing a lot of reps, but like money's not there, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, no, not even remotely. I mean, luckily I did have, a good network, like I mentioned, that did actually exist. I am here in Chicago. And so I was able to, pick up some of my own, friends and family to help out, in terms of, doing a couple transactions here and there. But the team did do a great job of providing leads and whatnot. And, it is kind of a numbers game when you're doing like Zillow leads and things like that. And so, yeah, it really was just hustling my ass off for a year straight. And yeah, the money wasn't necessarily there, but I knew it was just a sacrifice where if I put that time and effort in, that I would learn all of the things that, were required to learn so that I ultimately could, make more money.
Yep. Talk to us about Zill Leads. We've only scratched on that, and I know a few agents use it, but especially when you're young and you don't have this giant budget to work with.
Yeah.
Like, why did you go down that route? And go in retrospect, was it a good choice? Would you have done something differently?
No, I think it was a great choice. And so the thing about Zill Leads is, it's these strangers. And so you're in a position where you meet them at the property, and then you have to win over their trust within seconds to then become their buyer's agent. So it gets pretty convoluted because sometimes I think you're the selling agent. You'll walk up and you're like, hey, how we doing? You ready to see this place? I'm excited. Let's go. And then they're like, wait, who are you? And so what Ben and the team were great about was really being regimented in exactly how you approach that process and how you're able to, communicate with these people so that you can effectively and efficiently transmit that value so that you can then help them out down the road.
Okay. All right. And then are you still using Zill Leads today?
Not so much today, no. Mostly just focusing on my network. And I'm actually kind of trying to phase a little bit out of the brokerage side of the business and focus more on investing.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that transition. So when you first became an agent, was investing always in the back of your mind?
Yeah, so like I said, I had the vision of the pina colada on the beach, right? And I wanted the quote unquote passive income, the checks rolling in. So yeah, in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to invest in real estate and have these stabilized properties that I was ultimately managing. And this was going to kind of be a means to an end where I'd, get some money in my bank account, save up some of that dough and put it into those properties. And I was learning all of that along the way. While I was learning the brokerage side of things, I was picking a bunch of investors' brains, going to networking events, things like that. And, again, just trying to be a sponge. And so just when you're learning the brokerage side of things, you learn how to purchase a property and how to, educate people on how to do that. And there were so many things that I learned that I was immediately able to utilize, like seller credits, which we were just talking about with Lance over here, which is such a funny thing. And that was like a light bulb moment. I was like, wait a second, I can ask for 3% of the purchase price. I only need to put 3.5% down. So hold on, what's the math here? Because we didn't have a whole lot of money and we just wanted to get into it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a little bit for people who are struggling to get in the game, right? So if you have something that you're buying for $500,000, right? You can take a 3% credit. So I can't do math. That's $15K roughly. So you can bump your price up to, I'll buy it for $515, take the $15,000 credit. It all nets the same to the seller, but explain what's the benefit for you on the buy side.
It's less money in the deal, less money up front that you have to come up with.
Correct. Because if you're financing that $15K, right, you're financing 95% of it or whatever.
Right.
You're only out of pocket another whatever $1,000, $2,000, but you have $15K of credit to go towards your down payment.
Exactly.
Now the money doesn't disappear. You're highly leveraged now. Like full disclosure, you're
maximum leverage.
Yeah, there's risk here.
Yeah.
But this is a strategy for if you're not turning around and selling the place in 2 years, like if you're going to hold this thing, it's a way to get into the game.
Exactly. Yep. And that's all we were focused on. We're just like, we just need to get into the game. We need to start somewhere. And, there's only so much money we're going to be able to save up over time. So we feel confident in the area. We feel confident in the asset and, let's go for it.
All right, but where is the asset? Where'd you buy?
So the first one was in Logan Square, right off of like Lawndale and Fullerton, West Logan Square.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-flat with a non-conforming garden unit that was partially finished. It had, windows from like the 90s, galvanized plumbing we weren't too worried about, but it was livable. It wasn't this big project. We knew we were going to want to do the kitchens and baths down the road. That was more or less our buy box. We knew it was going to be a 2-flat, non-conforming garden. And, when you're running the numbers and you're maxing out your leverage, it doesn't really pencil out that well. So there was no chance that any of these opportunities were going to be these cash flowing monsters, So it's like we were basically looking for something that, including the non-conforming garden rent, mind you, would basically break even.
Yep.
So we're talking maximum leverage, to your point, and then also, pretty high risk in the sense that in the somewhat unlikely event that you get 311 called on you and that your non-conforming garden income is no longer, coming in, you're in a not so great spot. So yeah, I can kind of run through the numbers if you'd like. It was an interesting kind of situation in terms of how it played out.
Sure. Before we do that though, who's we?
My brother and I, yeah.
All right, so
that.
you guys partner up.
Right. It's my brother and I, and really the only way that this was possible too is that he was a W-2 employee with a somewhat, high income. It was like 150-ish grand. And me, I was teaching Spain and Madrid for the 2 years prior, and then I was 1099 for like, not even 6 months before we went under contract on our first one.
All right, so to be clear though, so you're an agent, and within 6 months, you're gunning after your own thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so we were going for it.
Yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
This is throwing deep for our first play here.
Funny. We just went for it. But all right. So first one, Logan Square, Lawndale and Fullerton area. It was 2-flat brick, 30 wide lot, and the building was wide itself. It was like flush again, one of the lot lines, and so. Having been an agent, I was able to kind of pick up on some of those factors that I felt were solid value adds that were maybe not quite actually priced in, because a lot of these standard 25 by 125 frame, balloon frame houses are not remotely as valuable as a 30 wide brick, in my opinion, but they're, priced similarly. So we were looking for, again, the 2-flat, that, roughly fit within those criteria that I mentioned earlier in terms of livable as is, but there's some value add down the road. And so it was listed at $600. They dropped price to $575, and we immediately jumped on it because that kind of was starting to be in line with what our maximum DTI could afford, basically. And so we kind of lowballed them at first. That didn't work out because it was a very competitive market at the time, and she was telling me other offers were coming in, et cetera. And so we ultimately ended up coming to terms at $585 on paper, but with a 3% credit. So it ended up being something like almost 21 grand that we were not going to have to come up with out of pocket. We actually ended up going with a 5% down loan through A&N. This was before the 5% option became available to everyone. So we thought we were pretty savvy having found that, financing option. So it's 5% down. We got the $21,000 credit on a net $565, but still $585 on paper. We got a little bit of inspection item credits, and then we got prorated rents. We got kind of prorated taxes. And by the end of it, we only had to come out of pocket $2,000, which we were like, hooting and hollering about. We couldn't believe it. We were like, we did it. We made it. And then, of course, right after the closing table, we run back to the property because we wanted to take a look at the garden unit and just be in the property. We're like, we did it. We bought one. And then the second we walk in, we hear just thunderous steps coming down the back staircase. And the top floor tenant comes down, bangs on the basement door, and he goes, "We have not had heat for 2 days. It's the middle of January. Fucking get this under control." So that was an immediate shit show, which actually was kind of awesome. And we, of course, had laughs about, but it was like, welcome to, investing in real estate.
You didn't burn your call with Mark right there and then?
Wow. So funny.
So what did you do?
So it's radiant, it's on a boiler, and Luckily, my brother is more handy than I. We tinker on motorcycles, so like kind of restore vintage bikes. And so felt like we were handy enough to maybe try and dissect it rather than just immediately call, an HVAC guy like we probably should have. But my brother ended up somehow figuring out that it was some part on the boiler, and he, bought it. It was like $500, but bought it online. It was there the next day, and he, put it in. So
that's a good partner. I don't think I've had a partner in real estate yet that could take apart a boiler and put it back together in a crisis like that. Yeah. So make sure you recognize that.
Yeah, so funny.
All right, so
and don't let him know how good he is.
So that was a trip.
Relationship with the tenant moving forward, then, is that? I mean, that's got to earn a decent amount of respect, or the guy not give a shit. He's like, hey, I still had no heat for 2 days.
He didn't really give a shit, and they were like,
I see his perspective. He didn't have heat for 2 days. It's not your fault.
Yeah,
there's the previous owner.
Yeah, so maybe we got a brownie point here or there, but. No, he was kind of a hoarder and had these 2 huge dogs, and we noticeably saw a bunch of like mouse droppings everywhere when we toured it. So anyway.
Yeah, the fun of taking over property.
Exactly.
Is he still there?
No, that's the unit I live in now, which we've done some work to. So yeah, it's been
Was
been
that a messy exit, or did he go on his own after? Did you raise rent?
That's a good question. So I was nervous as hell that it was going to be a disaster. So my girlfriend had recently gotten basically this insane, draconian list of not a checkout list, when just like a move out checklist from her property manager. And it was with all these fees, like if you didn't scrub the inside of the oven and all this stuff. I was like, this is crazy, but I'm gonna copy paste this and I'm gonna fucking send it to these guys.
This is crazy. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So sent it to those guys, didn't get a response, but they left the place in halfway decent shape, and immediately called pest control and had to do this insanely deep clean, but it was all worth it. It's worked out so far.
All right, so during this time span, you're still helping people buy and sell, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you turn around pretty quickly and get the next one.
Yeah, so within a year, we were still looking. Again, we were very close in touch with our lender, just figuring out what our maximum DTI was and what our buying power was. And we figured out that we were able to get another one. And so right when we figured out that information, we were on the hunt again. And, we can talk about it maybe a little bit after this, but I have since realized through this whole process and listening to this podcast and doing all sorts of research, just your understanding or your vision of what a good deal looks like slowly changes. Yeah. And I certainly wouldn't be buying these same properties again, but it's been a phenomenal entry point to, the game here that we're playing. But to go back, it was the same kind of buy box. We wanted brick, we wanted a 30 wide lot, we wanted it to be livable as is, but still with some value add potential. My brother was then going to move into that one, and so we'd be house hacking both of these. Again, maximum leverage, and we also wanted to make sure that it had a partially finished basement, that we could maybe do light cosmetic work to that, and then rent it out to make the numbers work. Without that, doesn't work. So not the best strategy in the world when you're relying on technically illegal rent coming in. But yeah, so we did that again, and we found another one off of like Harding and Diversey, right off like Pulaski and Diversey. And I should also mention that we did work to both of these garden units ourselves. We're like, yeah, we're handy. This will be fucking easy. We're like 2 weeks, $1,200. We'll buy an island, swap out the cabinets. Piece of
you
cake.
walk over to Studio 41 down the block.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where we went. But both of these were DIY, and it was a fucking disaster. It was like what we thought was gonna be 2 weeks. Was the first one took like 2.5 months, and we wanted to rip our hair out. The second one took like 4 months, and we're wanting to we're like, all right, we might as well just get a case of beer and knock out some drywall. Next thing you know, we're just like making zero progress, taking way long, going way over budget. The classic, story. Again, like welcome to being a landlord. But yeah, so, we ended up rehabbing that garden unit as well. And within a year, we had two flats with non-conforming garden units. And, we're still psyched about it, but we're eager to keep on keeping on.
All right, so the relationship with you and your brother, like at some point are you guys like at each other's throats, right? Those situations, when things get tough, it gets very easy to turn on each other.
And when you're brothers, you could say a lot of things you wouldn't say usually to somebody else.
To a partner,
Yeah. So, fortunately, we have a great relationship. We're best buds, and we get along well. We can communicate somewhat effectively. But yeah, man, it's brutal, especially when you're working a full-time job, and then, after you're done working your full-time job, you got to go to the building. It's like, let's go back to the building. Let's try and keep chipping away at this. And I should also mention on the second one, we had another buddy go in on it with us who was a plumber and was also pretty handy. So we certainly felt capable to take on these DIY projects. But
what was the biggest thing? Was it just undershooting it from the beginning? What were some of the biggest reasons for the delays?
Sure. So, I would say we just overestimated our ability in fucking doing these projects. It's like, I certainly have a great appreciation for what carpenters can do, what drywallers do. Drywall turned out to be the hardest thing of all.
Mudding and taping,
dude, fuck, yeah, putting it up, one thing. Mudding, taping, whole different story. We're like, this looks like shit. Okay, let's sand it down again. Let's do another layer of mud. Fuck. So anyway, yeah, a lot of laughs throughout, but yeah, certainly some, maybe not tears, but there was blood. There was blood.
To confirm though, do you guys got owner-occupied FHA for both?
No, so we did, the first one was the 5% down, which at the time was almost this alternative financing through A&N. They were the only ones that really provided it. The second one, we were planning on doing FHA, but then right when we were pretty much offering on it, that 5% down became, yeah, it was actually right before, but we were able to use it because it hadn't quite come out yet. Anyway, 5% down conventional for both. So still PMI, but...
On the second... deal, did you same approach, the seller credit, all that, like minimum money to closing?
Maximum seller credit, maximum inspection item credit, prorated rents, everything in our power that we could do to minimize our upfront. Yeah, cash to the closing table.
Yeah, one real small negotiating thing is when you're going back and forth on price. One of the things I like to slip in there is getting my tax proration up to like 120. Right, no. If I'm gonna accept their price, like screw, I'm gonna get $1,000 back right here.
Yep.
Like, and everyone always says yes to it. Yeah. Because you're giving them the number they want. Yeah. It's just a little like to pick up that extra $1,000, $1,500. It's not a huge deal, but it's money. It's real money, and it's almost a freebie every single time.
Yeah. It was also helpful to just have, even though it's a little bit, but experience as a broker where I'm getting on the phone with the listing agent and I'm, setting expectations that we're going to make it to the closing table. We're rock solid buyers. Like I had, a pre-approval. And actually, I don't know if I should mention this here, but, basically lines saying that we're putting 20% down, but actually putting 5% down, throwing out appraisal gap, because these are multiple offer situations. We're having to be competitive while also putting forth probably the weakest offer, among the whole batch, but then having to relay the confidence to the broker that we'll get this to the closing table, So,
it's easy to do it for yourself, but you can't do it for a client.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you take a commission on the deal? Did you offer that to the seller? How'd you handle that?
Rolled it into the deal. That was the other way that we were able to.
That's usually not supposed to be, but usually is one of the more attractive things to the selling agent.
I should have mentioned that before too, because that was absolutely the reason we were able to minimize the cash needed to close as well. Just rolled it in.
Yeah, and for everyone question should I get my license? It's like do one deal.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
or even just
absolutely.
the data. The data itself is worth the $1,500 a year or whatever.
Well,
but what you do one deal and it's all right. I'm set for 10 years. I got my payback.
The listing broker will transact differently with you as a buyer realtor than as just a everyday citizen.
Totally.
non-licensed person.
Everyday citizen.
Yeah, a non-licensed agent or non-licensed person, because there's a whole bunch of risk for that listing agent to say something wrong, misrepresent, say something that technically puts them in representation for you, dual agency, all that stuff. So you as your own agent there, even if you didn't get a commission on that, you still have a different level of leverage in that conversation with the listing agent.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
Which makes it worth for getting the license, just to be able to have a different level of conversation.
Right.
Yep. All right. So I know you've had some troubles here. We had a garage burn down. We know that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to start there, but give us some of the other stories here.
Yeah, so the boiler right out the gate was hilarious and just so funny that it was instantaneous. But yeah, recently we had a tenant, and it actually was on video from a neighbor who had a camera out there. Tenant tossed a cig in the trash can, and seconds later, it's on camera that the whole garage is just engulfed in flames. And like, Mark, because the reason I called actually was because I wanted to get that contact, and he was on the show, but maybe I just wanted to hear your voice and not sift through the episodes. But I knew that there were guys like adjusters that can represent you and be the ones that are talking to the insurance companies. And again, something I learned here on the show, but yeah, that was the reason behind calling Mark. And it was definitely a crazy experience that we're still kind of working through because it was somewhat recent, but that's been, certainly challenging. Just, miscellaneous dealing with tenants. It's certainly not all, rainbows.
Did you end up hiring an adjuster for that event?
He was super nice, honest, straightforward. And he was like, it's just not worth it at this, based on the numbers that we're looking at here. Just like you'd be paying me for no reason. So,
well, a lot of times with garages, there's specific amounts that are allocated in your policy. Like you can't only get this much. He's got nothing to fight for.
Right. Exactly.
So, okay. Well, at least you talked to me. I made you learn something from talking.
It
It
was
was great.
Dorian.
It was
I don't know what episode.
Tremendously helpful.
Yeah.
It was the episode where I thought we were.
It was my solo one.
Yeah, you did the only time I wasn't on the episode.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I thought we were doing Zoom, and Mark's like, "Hey, are you here?" And I was like, "Nope."
So funny.
All right, talk to us about some of these tenant ones though, because there's people here. A lot of people buying their first place, looking at their first place. Give us some the slap of reality. Some of these, maybe not issues, but just things that you don't think of that you got to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it just kind of revolves around communication and just expectation setting. I think in the beginning we were almost too straightforward and honest because we wanted to have this. Yeah, we're a family. This is all, I'm living in the building. This is all, cool. Like, let's hang out in the backyard. Let's have a beer. Like, let's all, have fun here. But then you kind of establish this, this relationship with your tenant then where, oh yeah, we're cool. So, we have all of this shit going wrong. So you want to establish this relationship where, you're approachable. They're not going to get you in trouble, particularly I was kind of treading lightly with the non-conforming garden unit, So I wanted to be on a good standing with them, but I think we almost overcompensated. And next thing you know, they're just kind of reaching out to us about every little thing where it's like, I want to be a good landlord. I want to absolutely take care of you, make sure you're happy. But you start to enter these territories where now it's a bit much. So, you give an inch and sometimes it'll take a mile.
Yeah, absolutely. Firm but fair. Is that
firm but fair? Yeah.
So, all right. What's next? You got the two buildings. Are you running that playbook back? Are you still working on the agent side? What's 2025 look like for you?
So that's a great question that I'm kind of trying to answer myself. I have been in this exploratory since getting into that. We really just dove in. It was all we knew. It was all we had thought was the best play, and it probably was, considering now we have a good place to live. But now we actually want to make money on investing in real estate because these
pina coladas aren't free.
Yeah, exactly. So they might be somewhat breaking even, but I just was realizing that my parapet wall is kind of starting to buckle, and getting guys out there yeah, it's going to be $34,000, but I'm like, shit, there goes all of my cash flow for the next 10 fucking years. So this is not a good fucking investment. So, we're trying to now understand well, I guess get a different understanding of what other investment opportunities are like. So I've been listening to this podcast a ton. I've been, going to some conferences and networking events and just trying to absorb information and figure out what the next move is. And I mean, I listened to your episode here with Kirby Atwell, which was awesome. And I've, kind of been focused on the whole Airbnb approach and, specifically like multifamily Airbnb in like a rinky-dink town that you'd never expect would actually be, an opportunity that you can have substantial cash flow. So looking at Airbnbs, I did throw down with my brother again on a syndication opportunity from an investor that I met, really to just learn what that even looks like. So technically I split 1% ownership. So I have 0.5% in ownership in an 11-unit building in Avondale.
Oh, please tell me when you go to meetups though, you're like, yeah, I own 20 doors.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a joke. I know. It's like, yeah. So yeah, I got 17 doors. It's whatever. Making negative money. But so yeah, it's like that. It's like, you can say you have all these doors, but really, how much equity do you have? What's your cash flow look like? Really, is this legitimate? Or, so the Airbnbs, trying to understand how I can maybe find deals for that same investor that, allowed me to, toss in some money into that deal. So I know his buy box and I'm actively looking for deals for him that basically I could broker and then roll that commission into that deal. And then I have another investor that I've kind of just networked with and I'm close with that he has a specific buy box. So I'm kind of looking for deals for him as well. And I'm, going down the south and west side and like looking at all these very, messed up houses that I can potentially learn how he approaches those deals. So kind of taking in information from all these different people and sources that actually has almost become too much. And it's funny, I started out where it's like, all right, I'm just going to go for it. I know what I'm looking for. Now I've learned all this other information, all these different ways to invest it. I'm almost getting into another period of, a newfound period of like analysis paralysis where I don't actually kind of know which way to go down because I've learned of all these different ways to invest. So, but I think we will probably do an Airbnb just because it sounds awesome and the cash flow is just ridiculous on paper, but we'll see. There are certainly risks there as well.
Well, I want to point something out because there's a big difference between having 6 units, no cash flow, or breaking even, and no units, because you are getting, you're paying down your mortgage.
Yeah.
You've locked in your rate for that debt that you have on both properties. You're getting the write-offs on an annual basis between you and your brother. Rents are hopefully going up, and obviously the value is going to, it might be a 10-year window, but you're getting 4 other huge benefits from having those 2 properties, even if you're living for free.
No.
Oh, okay. I thought that was with you living free in there. Okay.
No. So yeah, I'm basically paying fair market rent. My brother's paying, I guess we're probably paying a little bit below fair market rent.
So there's a little benefit. You're not going to be living at home, I don't think, anymore at this point.
You're building equity.
Oh, yeah.
That's the biggest. Biggest thing is like, just look at this thing 10, 15 years from now. Like
Absolutely.
If it's kind of servicing itself and you turn around and you're focused on these other ventures, all of a sudden you turn back around 10 years later, you're like, oh shit, I got a couple $100,000 in this one property.
Absolutely.
All like the giant rehabs we do and all like the effort we do and like direct mailers to get direct to seller, the best performing things I have in my portfolio are the personal residents I bought 8 years ago and 10 years ago.
Yeah, because the ones you've had the longest.
Yeah, and one of them is on a shorter note. It's almost done.
What is it, Tom? What's the phrase?
Time is your biggest asset. He does listen.
No, I mean, to be fair, I could not be happier that we got these 2, and I think they'll serve us wonderfully over time. I mean, the second one that we bought in December, we're not even 12 months it hasn't even been 12 months since we've owned this property. 2 doors down, identical building, same like finished garden unit. It has like a slightly remodeled kitchen in one of the units. Really couldn't be a better comp, and it's 2 doors down. Just traded for like $75,000 more than what we bought ours for. So if we got it reappraised tomorrow, like I have no question in my mind that we already have, $100,000 worth of equity. And we put in, and it's so funny. I know you guys have mentioned this on the podcast too. It's like your initial investment, that's not what's gaining appreciation over time.
Yeah, you spent
the
$2,000.
whole building.
You spent $2,000 to get appreciation on $500,000. Like
Yeah.
that's a cheat code.
Yeah,
like it's
so-
just not.
Yeah, so we still feel great.
I always tell people, how long
about
would it take
these.
you to save 100,000 cash?
Exactly.
I mean, most 30-year-olds would struggle.
You'd have to invest $1 million and get a 10% return. Right? Like that's
In my 20s, I literally only started over insurance policy just so I would stop like trying to spend all the money and invest it. I had no other way of saving except trying to lock it out in somewhere. Like it's tough. But my point is to get $100,000 like that's huge.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yes, we feel good about it.
all right. So are you looking at any specific towns for these Airbnbs?
Yes.
Are you following Kirby over to Michigan City?
So I've absolutely been looking at Michigan City completely. Yeah.
Actually, there's a tie in here. We were talking before we aired. You're from Ravenswood Manor. You actually know who the Kuhlmans are.
Yeah, Teddy.
And I know Teddy from there as well, but then he does the same thing. He's got several places in Michigan City, and we stay at one every year.
I know, and I heard that on this show, and you mentioned it one time. And I was looking into it, and this is before I heard the episode with Kirby. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is awesome. Because we were actually looking in Miller Beach, Indiana, which is just a great little pocket right outside of Gary. And it's just this awesome community, but it's all single families. And, we're running the numbers. We're on AirDNA. We're figuring out what, our conservative, numbers might look like. But then you look at Michigan City, Indiana, or like Sheboygan, Wisconsin, or, what is it? Battle Creek, Michigan, all these towns that you would think never have any traffic in terms of tourism actually perform incredibly well. And on a conservative basis, you can, figure in basically a worst case scenario would be a long-term rental that would still cash flow, $500-600. But then on the high end, if you're looking at it from a best case scenario, we're talking about like $3,000 a month in cash flow on a property or a multi-unit that's, $200,000. It's crazy.
So we're going to put you on the spot here. You get very excited here and you see these numbers. And if they're true, like when are you going to buy one of these?
I know. Thank you. I need this. I need some accountability here.
Because you have to you come back and either hang you over the coals or
Exactly. I know. Part of
congratulate
this
you.
is like, I need to come back in 2 years and be like, I got all these properties, have all this progress. But we have been actively looking. We've been offering on spots. So, it's just it really is a matter of time. We're going to make it happen. I promise, Mark. I'll make it happen.
All right.
All
You're
right,
going to send
he's
us an
live.
update because we'll post it
All right,
online then.
sounds good.
So, all right. Anything else before we wrap?
That's it, man.
All right.
All right, good stuff. You know the wrap-up questions. So let's do it here.
What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this so far at being only 29 when others wish they could?
Sure. So, I would say just kind of probably actually being just social and being inquisitive and asking a whole bunch of questions and, almost being shameless in that aspect, like going to these networking events and just picking people's brains and just trying to learn as much as I possibly can so that I at least know a little bit about a lot of different things,
I love how proud you are about shameless. You're like, oh, yeah, shameless too.
Yeah.
Coming from a sales background, that was almost like a positive
yeah,
attribute.
it's funny. Yeah, I love how it's the spin.
So,
Yeah.
all right, what is one piece of advice you would tell someone that's just yet to buy the first property here in Chicago?
I would say, I would say also kind of be shameless and just asking those questions. Like you don't know what you don't know. And, having a good team in terms of a broker, a lender, all these different people that are involved, contractor especially too, just so that they can answer those questions for you and you can trust that they're going to give you, good feedback and good answers is huge. And then also just not looking for home run deals. Like, luckily, I didn't necessarily know what a home run deal looked like at the time, but just being cool with having a single or a double, for your first couple, and then learning with experience.
What do you do for fun?
I like to go sailing. I like to ride motorcycles. I like to lose money on multifamily buildings. Just piano as well.
Well, you're in a band. I think you were telling us before the show. You got to share that, your band name.
Yeah, the Halloweeners.
It's so good.
Funny.
All right.
I think it's the first time wiener's been said on the podcast.
That's a shame. It took us 300 something episodes. All right. What is a good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners?
I would say Extreme Ownership got me going. I know you're a fan of that one. Yeah, he's a nut. So, I would say that. I mean, obviously this podcast, I know you guys get that all the time, but I can't even imagine not having run into this just listen to the end of this episode for every single episode, and taking all these books, taking all these pieces of advice, and you will be miles ahead of the competition out there.
Love it. Thank you.
Besides yourself, name a valuable resource for other Chicago real estate investors.
There are so many. Kind of going back to just setting up your own team, find an investment-minded broker like myself, I guess. But I buy shitty deals, so maybe not the best. No, I'm kidding. But Scott Schneiderman who used to be with Guaranteed Rate Cross Country, he's been a great lender that's been in my corner. Guy on my team who's been on the podcast, actually, Catalin Matichuk.
Oh, I didn't know that connection.
Yeah. So he's awesome, and he's super generous with his time and giving advice. Let's say those guys.
All right, yeah, absolutely. We see him at every Renovo event. So
nice.
All right, cool. We can link to all that in the show notes. Joey, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, I would say, feel free to call me anytime. My number is 773-951-5059. I'm happy to, just even be a third party, little someone that you can give a call to and, be able to. It's always nice to have a backboard, someone to at least throw your opportunities by. So myself, like I said, Catalina is another great resource. But yeah, call me anytime.
All right. Awesome. We have our Chicago Fact. Who are we playing for? Who's sponsoring?
All right, we're playing for Mark Irwin. Mark bought a shirt on Straight Up Chicago Investor merch store. Mark, if myself or Joey get this right, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by Chance over at Lavelle Law.
All right, let's do this. All right. So our guest here today is also a U of I alum, was bartending down at Clybourne. According to ChatGPT, Champaign is the 9th largest city in Illinois. So there are 8 cities with a larger population. Between the two of you, can you guys name 7 of them? 7 a fair number? Maybe I'll even give you 6 if you're struggling.
Chicago.
Springfield.
Yep.
Springfield. Rockford.
Probably Naperville.
Yep.
Naperville. Joliet.
Yeah, I was going to say Joliet.
Aurora.
You're crushing it.
Normal.
Normal's not. You're at 6. You're missing 2.
Yikes.
Decatur.
No.
Moline.
No.
Yikes.
All right, so one at Caterpillar.
I'm falling apart.
Normal. Bloomington.
No.
I'm trying to think of even just like the Western burbs, like Des Plaines.
You got one burb out here. You got a Western burb, and you got one mid-state.
Aurora, Schaumburg.
Like Lyle, yeah, Schaumburg.
Elgin.
Elgin. I was going to say Riverboat.
Yeah.
You're missing
Rockford? No.
No, and when we had Michelle, that attorney, on here, she was saying she was from there, and she's making fun of it. Man, if we have any listeners in Peoria, we are sorry again.
Peoria.
I thought I said Peoria.
No, you did not.
Did I not say Peoria?
Lance is confirming you did not. I said Caterpillar. Come on, what else do you need?
Wait, that's why I thought I said Peoria already. Then all right, we still got it though, right?
You got it. You got something.
All right.
There we go.
I don't want to be ending on a downer here.
There we go.
But we are just losing our Peoria contingency left and right. So if anyone owns like 20 units in Peoria, let's get you on this show.
I actually have a couple people in Go Abundance that we can have on actually. All right, Mark, you get $50 gift card brought to you by Lavelle Law. Nice job, Joey. Listeners, man, thank you very much, man, for coming out here. Tom, thank you as always. Listeners, share this episode with a friend and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and do that.